so good. I just love that. It's just got so much energy, and like we're here. You don't see this, but we're here having like a little rave behind the intro.
That intro gets me
enjoying
every
it.
time.
Yeah,
Every time.
it's really good. I have to admit, I even have. Let me take a little side trip here. I even have lighting. Wow, no, I'm like I don't even have focus. I have lighting that I could even do. Let's see if anything actually adds interest. That doesn't actually add interest. I just turned it off. I thought one of these actually would do more substantial color effects. There you go, like shooting rainbows now up
Oh,
and
wow.
over.
Very fancy.
Yeah, I thought one of them would be more rave-like, but like Hanukkah
Sort of ravey. A little
is not
rainbow.
really
Rave bow.
rave-bow. I've been chilling with Aurora because I feel like that's like smooth. Anyways, welcome to another Data and API show. It is great to have you here. We are live today. Like this is not a fake live. This is not
No.
a streaming. Apparently, y'all don't like the fake live because you guys all just pieced out halfway through the show. So today we got a real one, our actual real live shows. Yeah,
This is real life
this is
happening
real life.
in real time, and that's you can tell from how loopy we are.
Yeah.
Hi everybody, welcome. Please let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from, or in the comments on the video. Yeah, how you doing, Jesse?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling energetic. I'm back from a little bit of vacation last week, so
Nice.
ready to kick off new stuff. We've got the Hasura community call coming up on this Thursday, so we've got some really cool stuff to talk about and show off there. A lot of stuff around metadata, a lot of stuff around GitHub Actions, like just really cool features around the Hasura CLI interface. Rumor has it we've got another release dropping this week. I don't know if you've noticed, but we're kind of pumping these things out like all the time. So
there's just the new
cool
features
stuff.
are dropping like it's hot. So everybody tune in on Thursday. And where can folks go to sign up for that if they haven't registered already?
They can go to the Hasura community call page. Do we have a banner for that, or should I actually just
let me drop it
one
in the link in the chat. Drop the link in the chat.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna have the community call on Thursday and tomorrow. If you have not yet submitted for HasuraCon 2022, we are still accepting talk proposals for another few days. So, get your talk proposals in for HasuraCon, and B, if you have sort of an inkling that you might want to give a talk, whether at HasuraCon or somewhere else, we are here to support you in doing that. And step one is getting your talk accepted at HasuraCon or some other conference out there. So we're also doing a conference talk submission workshop tomorrow, Wednesday. So you can also read about that and register on our events page. So hasura.io/events. And if you go to /events/HasuraCon 2022, you can read all about the conference proposals and how you can get to speak about the awesome stuff you're doing with Hasura at HasuraCon. Woo!
Woo. That was a woo for HasuraCon. Yeah, love it. So today we're actually doing our last of the Hasura Super App series. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Basically what we're doing is we're kind of having a review on what we've covered so far. And yeah, we're going to have a look at sort of what's beyond actions inside of Hasura and kind of the whole picture of building applications with Hasura. So
sweet. Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, it sounds great. So the last few weeks we've been looking at different use cases for Hasura Actions, right? And different ways that we can use them to accomplish whatever we want in our apps. So if folks haven't seen those discussions in the past, we were talking about payments, we were talking about authentication, authorization, we were talking about just generally how actions work and how we can use them to build custom business logic into our apps, you can check out the past episodes on YouTube or on the community/data and API show page on Hasura.io and catch up on all the fun stuff we've been doing. But for the folks who are just tuning in now, quick recap. Jesse, can we go through some of the things that you have been trying to impart, the nuggets of wisdom that you've been trying to impart upon me and the rest of us who are getting to know actions?
Yeah, so I think if you were to break it down, there's kind of two main flows of where actions come into play inside of the Hasura ecosystem. One is the custom business logic. I need to do something that is really specific for my application. The example that we have and went through was actually one around actions in particular for logins. So if we look at, and I'm going to go to this route directory here, that's simply where the action is hosted. But we had this sign up action that we were using as an example, and essentially this is something we expose to the Hasura interface, and we say that this is where we actually do like sign up behavior, and we use this as an opportunity to take in a payload, username, password. We check to make sure that it's not going to collide with anybody in our existing user database by checking back at the Hasura database. So we've exposed this action in Hasura's API. We call it, and it proxies over to this function, which then calls back over to the Hasura database with an API call and says, hey, do we have any users that actually fit this description? And if we don't, then it goes back over and says, okay, let's go ahead and create a user now that matches this person. We'll take this content and we'll generate a JWT token for them, and we'll send that payload back through to the end user so they can basically store the JWT on their browser and then be able to have authenticated access. And in our system, we've got refresh tokens and things like that to kind of emulate best practice. But that being said, like the basic flow is calling through Hasura to an external server, doing a couple of actions, a couple of API calls back and forth between the Hasura database, and then being able to generate something that we send back through Hasura all the way back to the client. And then we define those and we make them all specific by going to the actions panel here. And we do things like with the sign up here, where we're able to identify what those payloads look like. We're able to say, okay, we've got a sign up input, we've got a JWT output, and we just define these types so that we still get all of that consistent GraphQL schema behavior without having to actually sacrifice, like essentially calling a totally opaque REST call. We're able to say, no, we're going to get this JWT back and this email and refresh token, all this kind of detail back. So that was like the use case number one, where we had everything. Since when we had released this application, start of last year, we actually introduced a new feature that was then REST connectors. So for something like payments, where what we had been doing previously was essentially just doing a pass through, if you will, straight through to Stripe, we were able to say, actually, in this case, what we wanted to do was to call the Stripe API directly without having to be able to essentially handle any proxy code just to map a REST or a GraphQL endpoint to the Stripe API. We could actually transform the shape of our request exactly the way that we wanted it. And we did that by first modifying and changing the shape of everything. But then we were able to go inside of the components, inside of the Hasura metadata folder here. And if we go inside to the actions, we were able to modify the Stripe call. Let me find where that Stripe call is here.
And while you're doing that, just going to remind everybody that the code that we've been exploring is from this awesome e-commerce demo app that you can find all of the source code for on our GitHub at github.com/Hasura/Hasura-e-commerce. And if you want to read more about kind of this app on a high level and what it's doing, we call it, we lovingly refer to it as the Super App because it does so many super things. So you can read all about the kind of use cases that we've tried to implement in here, which are hopefully some very common patterns that you might also need in whatever you're trying to build. So you can read all about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so then we'll see here that we modified it by changing the content type to the Stripe required XWW form URL encoded, and we were able to then get Stripe connected inside of our ecosystem. So show one, we looked at, what use cases you would need for actions, how do you architect applications with Hasura, what lives in your database, what needs to be business logic, things of that nature. Show number two, we looked at the actual the true classic use case of a action that is doing custom business logic that is doing multiple things, generating JWTs, checking for unique users, blah, blah, blah. The third show, we talked about replacing one of those handlers by then just calling the API directly. When we actually expose it inside of our API here, we can go to the Explorer here. We have something to the effect of, you see if I can somehow zoom this out a little bit. We could essentially call the Stripe endpoint. I think it's a mutation is what we had made it as.
Mm-hmm.
Stripe confirm payment, and we're able to take in whatever information that we're looking for to be able to execute our code. And that's actually calling the Stripe API directly, not having any sort of special features or any kind of a proxy in between that we have to maintain and provision and whatever else. We're able to then get the full benefits of GraphQL. We can return exactly the shape of the object we would expect. So that was really cool. That's a nice way to stream it up. Now, I think one of the things that also is worth kind of noting is that this kind of comes back to this bigger topic of architecture and building with Hasura. So how do you know which features do you put inside of an action? How do you know which features do you maybe just call the REST API specifically? Is this the only way to do custom business logic inside of Hasura? And no, it's not. There is actually a number of other ways beyond actions to actually implement custom behavior. One that I wanted to specifically call out before we kind of keep going is, so this is sitting on Postgres, right? This is a Postgres database. And what we wanted to do is actually say, well, in some cases, let's go to our data model here. In some cases, if we go to, in the case of order, we would have a use case here where, we've got all of these order items that are connected to this from our data model. So we have the order and the order product, I think is what we call it here, order product items. So we have like these relations between multiple products that are going to be attached to a single order. Well, like, what if I want to maybe look up the actual price, or maybe I even want to like filter by price and be able to get some information down the road where I don't necessarily want to have to run this calculation on these rows over and over again. How could I potentially surface or be able to even use the total order cost as a value in my searching, my filtering, looking for the highest order cost? And to do that, what we would need essentially is a database function that essentially the same thing we have as our updated at and our created at. We need a function that is going to do a special behavior for the whole row, and then be able to be having a trigger. So whenever we actually create or update this order item, we are able to get a total price. Well, like, we can do that in database land, and thanks to Hasura, we can actually surface that as well. So what we've done here in this case is I've gotten a simple SQL function here, and like,
looks super simple.
Yeah, dear viewer, I am out of my depth with this stuff. Like, this was a little bit of fiddly for me, so I am trying to learn more DB-ish things. But like, so this is not take it and ship it level code, but this is an example of something that you could do if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So So this is the kind of thing where, like, folks, I think, are often wondering, okay, I have some specific thing that I want to kind of escape the basic. I need to escape the basic kind of CRUD operations that are sort of out of the box, easy to do. How can I do that? Like, can I use my existing infrastructure that I already have for maybe doing this stuff in the database, right? Or can I use the existing kind of small internal services I have, or internal APIs that my sister team has already set up for doing this? Or can I use this third-party API that's out here? And the answer is like yes to all of the above, right? You can kind of mix and match these bits and pieces as you need to, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Because
sorry, go
I
ahead.
mean, so if you've got, so the very classic case of Hasura is you've got somebody who's got a production database already configured, and now they're wanting to get that API on there, and they're wanting to be able to ship products with this. Well, in many cases, you've got a DBA, like database admin, who's actually knows this stuff. Like this is what they live and breathe, and they like doing this, and they've gotten all the maps and the charts, and they've done everything that's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
And now what they're wanting to do is be able to figure out how can they leverage the best of their database practices into an API format. So in a case like this is basic SQL stuff for people who do SQL. This is like computer science degree for me, but like this is basic SQL stuff for people who do SQL, right? And so if we look at the function here just a little bit, we're declaring the function itself. We're getting a variable in place here for collecting our total, and then you essentially run some joins on the public orders, or the orders that you're actually wanting to sum up. And then we do some basic math on there and return that to this row, which was kind of the parent action. And then we define a trigger that runs on there. This is okay. Every time we create or update, we're going to run this function on this row. And so again, we're not going to go into SQL here because it's not what we do.
That's going to be a different episode.
Yeah. Nobody's watching me for SQL tips and tricks. Not yet, anyways. That might change by the end of the year. But anyways, that's not what we're doing right now. But so this is something a DBA would have. This is something they would already have defined and put in place. And we're able to simply lift that up and expose that as behavior that's now something that we can actually call. And you'll see we even have down here this track this. We also have the ability to track functions themselves as API calls. So we could create a function that does some kind of a fancy behavior and be able to expose that on the API top level.
Yeah,
so these are all some of the behaviors that we're looking at. Yeah.
And then the tracking is when you say we can track any function like this, like as if it's an API call, that means that then we can sort of monitor how it's being used. We can understand
that means inside of the API, right? So when if we have a table that comes from our database that we don't currently use, let's go ahead and create one. Now we're really going to like test my my knowledge here.
No, it's cool. Just curious.
We can try it. So we're going to do something kind of like create a table. I believe we're going to call this something kind of like analytics. Did I spell that correct, English teacher?
Looks right to me, but I haven't had an entire cup of coffee yet today, so.
And we're going to just put a simple column on there.
That you are awesome. We are all awesome, and so is CSS. So okay, we're doing our we're creating our analytics table.
So we have this. I'm not going to track this one. I'm just creating this table as an example. So we're going to go ahead and hit run. And when we do that, see here, I've already made a mistake. Is it open? Is it like this thing here? I may have to actually just Google this because
are we just to zoom out a little bit? Are we trying to just demonstrate? If it's just about my tracking question, we don't need to go into this. But are we just trying to demonstrate like how you would go about creating a new function here?
Yeah. No, this is what I'm explaining. Oh, and tracking was currently enabled. So
gotcha.
What you'll see is when I did that, it automatically added analytics as a table here. So it's the tracking method here says, hey, Hasura, we have a new table on our database. We're going to track this in metadata so that you will expose this on the front end. Now, if we did another one here, because now that I have my syntax correct, and we did something kind of like special, I don't know, and we don't track this, we go ahead and hit run.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're not going to actually get that automatically added to our to the tables that Hasura is aware of. If we go back over to public here, we'll see untracked tables or views, and here we have in the case special is not yet tracked. And
Gotcha.
so this is something that would not be exposed to the API. If we wanted to come in here and we said something like special, we don't have that. We should have analytics, but we don't have special yet.
So track sort of means track like in
the metadata.
Graph. Okay.
In the metadata, in this folder.
Cool.
This is where we want to track its awareness of what's actually happening. Or inside of the metadata Postgres, inside the metadata database of Hasura's internals, we're tracking its awareness so that we can generate that GraphQL API from it. And then we come back.
Sweet.
Back here, we should have special now available to us.
Sweet. Yeah. Awesome. So would love to know from folks in the chat or in the comments on YouTube if you've used these custom functions before, or you've gotten your DBA to come over and use the function so that you can then expose it through the API, or if you've run into any snafus or have any questions about that, we would love to know. So please let us know in the chat or the comments as well.
Yeah, exactly. We get, like the typical story of the Hasura user, and I do a lot of interviews with them. So if you've got a great Hasura story, you contact me. I'd love to hear it and tell it to the community as a whole. But what's the typical story is somebody comes in and they've gotten a database put together. It's grown rather organically. They come to Hasura to try to get an API now. And then they realize just how fast Hasura exposes this data, right? They make it all of a sudden actually, oh, we can move very quickly with this tool. What they'll often do is they'll put a pause on their Hasura adoption, and then the time they were planning on using to build out API infrastructure, they go back to their database and they rethink their whole database. They go, oh, well, we could actually take this time to clean up this thing or make this schema a little bit neater. We were planning on having to do this workaround for our data model because it would be too hard to implement in the API, but that's actually not the case with Hasura and GraphQL. So we'll actually make our database model simpler. They'll do a lot of rework. In many cases when they want to. They don't have to, when they want to. And then they come back and put Hasura on top of it, and they're in a much better spot than they were to begin with. Even though they could have just run with what they had, they were like, oh, well, this is really cool because it does all of this like boilerplatey, trying to get all this basic stuff set up. And so a workaround where they maybe had a weird join table view thing created that was essentially replicating the behavior of what a custom action might be able to solve, they're able to just remove all of that ambiguity in their data model and be able to say, okay, no, we're going to actually just use the API and then now use this custom action over here. Now, a view again is a great place to be able to like do special behaviors if you want to have special kinds of relations or be able to pre-filter your results. Mm-hmm. You can make a view and track it here, but it's a really nice way to be able to work with your data is being able to have the flexibility to say database specific functionality we can expose, actions or these REST connectors we can also expose, and that's a great way to work with building out applications for Hasura, as you can see here. So the behavior, I'd probably put a bow on this here. The behavior then, if we go back to the data model here, we go to order, and we say that we wanted to take, for example, this one order 3592. At the moment, when these were created, the function wasn't in place, so I have this empty order total right now. If I take this order here, and I'm just going to run an update on it, and we'll just go ahead and tell it to change the updated date on it, and we'll say that the status is paid. And this is order 3592, and I'm going to just do a quick pull up on that here underneath the data itself. So we'll do ID is 3592.
Yeah, and this little data explorer thing is super handy too, the
Yeah.
browser. You can just
Now we
do
can
quick
see.
checks to make sure nothing funky is happening.
Now we can see that we actually have order total updated
Hey,
because the function ran, and that
power
becomes
of
really cool
function.
then because we can do things like order, and then we can say order by, and then we're going to go ahead and say that we want to order this by order total sending, and we'll get the order total from that. And now we'll see that for the majority of ours, we have no updates on those, but we have the order total created for those two the one that I did as a test because after a while I start to actually check my code before I run these shows. And then we have the order total, which I think was like a bunch of sunglasses or something, if I recall correctly.
I believe they were aviators, okay, not just
They were
any
they were a
sunglasses.
pair
They
of
were
snazzy
Top
aviators.
Gun worthy mirrored aviators.
Or I think
Val
as I
Kilmer
referred
would
to
be
him
proud.
as discount pit bull for me was the look we were going for. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is really cool. So we have like so many options for how to implement these little chunks of logic across our
Yeah.
application. So that's where I guess the hard part becomes deciding on the trade-offs between, where you want to accomplish this sort of legwork, right? Like, as you said before, is your data model really where you need it to be in order to kind of accomplish this with as least effort as possible and as least number of migrations and things like that? And is there have you kind of taken advantage of any legacy things that are out there that you already have that you can just kind of plunk in to make your life as quick and easy as possible?
Because any time that you can also do the work on the database, you're going to cut out latency, right? You're not doing the round trips. So if it's something like this that does sort of live as a natural piece of your data, now maybe you wanted to have something like a price parity thing, right? So potentially you'd want to take this order total, and then you would want to somehow get the geo data for a user, and you'd want to say we're going to do sort of a purchase power parity pricing, I believe is what they call that. When you say that somebody buying an iPhone, right? So like somebody buying an iPhone in the US based on US salaries and purchase power has one level of economic impact on a household, but somebody who's maybe got the purchase power of remote Indonesia is going to have a lower purchase power. And so that's potentially talking about like a year's salary almost. And so in some cases, you just want to say, we want to like adjust our pricing based on where it's going. And so that would be a kind of business logic you would need to run in an external service. You couldn't do that in the database. And so those are cases where you just think through, is this something that I can do on the database? And does this data belong inherently to the value of my data model? Or is this data that belongs inherently to the value of who's viewing it and the relationship it is to the person or the place that this data is going to? And so that might be something to bear in mind.
Yeah, totally. Would love to hear from folks either tuning in or checking out the recording on YouTube, whether you have any use cases where you found a really kind of a question mark around where is the best fit for implementing this custom logic. Should it live in the database? Should it live in something closer to the user, etc.? Like, we would love to hear about it if you have any questions, or how you've solved these kind of use cases in your own apps. Would love to hear what you've built and how you've implemented that. So please share with us in the chat or comments.
I'm trying a potentially foolhardy mission here of
Are we trying to update all of the missing order totals?
yeah. So
hey.
So what I'm going to try here is to update orders where the current time updated at is less than now. And then we're going to do is set oops, I just deleted one too many parentheses there. We're going to
Bane of our
set the
existence.
update, set the updated at to now, which is a Postgres method to be able to grab the current timestamp. Let's see if this actually works. So we just updated 2,411
We did something.
things. So now what we can do is we can actually check the history here to grab the previous query here.
That is so handy.
And so now we can actually see that we got the orders all updated. Now imagine running 2,411 async handlers to a function. That's possible, right? Like that works, but that's a bit more latency than potentially you want to do. And so in this case, this is helpful to just put this on the database. Now, again, as well, like if this was BigQuery and I was doing like a much bigger data manipulation, also think of that. Because if you are going to be running BigQuery executions on your database, that can get spendy quick. And so maybe these are some cases where it does make sense to say unit costs, I'm going to never run 2,000 at a time, but the operation costs on my database is so expensive, I will run this externally on a handler. So there's a lot of ways to reason about between cost, latency, whatever else is that you're trying to accomplish. Those are all things to bear in mind in your decision matrix on where should I be handling this custom business logic. I wanted to show another feature here in terms of the kind of like building applications and being able to figure out where you would like kind of beyond the actions, beyond the events and stuff. One thing that we can also do here is we can abstract this data out. So let's say that this very specifically this use case we want to expose inside of like a dashboard, right? We want to put this inside of one of our I think Grafana actually already speaks GraphQL, but let's say there was a different kind of data dashboard tool that you wanted to use for your business units. They were wanting to be able to track like the incoming orders, and that tool doesn't speak GraphQL per se. We can take an order like this, and we can go ahead and say something like query. We'll call this something like price by order. Or not, that makes zero sense. Order by total. There we go. And then we'll give it the fancy annotation there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually hit the rest button now. And what this lets me do is I can go ahead and say get price by, or get orders by total. I think I can give it whatever name I want. I don't think it has to be specific. And here we actually get this this fancy endpoint now, and we can say something like orders by total, and we'll make this be a simple GET request, and we'll go ahead and say create that endpoint. And now I've actually been able to extend my API, not only just speak GraphQL, but I can actually use this endpoint to be able to fetch that data wherever I would actually want to do that. I think I even have an example of hopscotch running here. We could kind of test this out. What I may have to do is make that be opened up because I don't think my secret is exposed at the moment. So if I paste this in here as a GET request, and now I need to pass in as my header, I need to pass in authorization. Actually, I'll do X Hasura admin secret. We'll run over and grab our super secret admin secret here for Hasura engine, which I believe is, yes, my secret. Kids, don't
unguessable.
Don't do as a
foolproof, fail safe.
And so we go ahead and we send this now. Yeah. And we can actually see that we're able to implement a very basic REST interface now on top of this data that is leveraging a database function that is being updated in my application.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it
This
is.
is all
It
pretty
is
cool
cool.
because like this is the minimum. Like I would have to sit there banging my head against this to figure out all of the different steps of like, okay, I've got to like make sure that this function is communicated to the front, and then we get this, we make sure that it's coming through, and we have a GraphQL way to talk to it, we have a REST way to talk to it. Like my head is hurting just thinking about that. So the fact that we can just kind of like plunk in a REST
Yeah,
endpoint when we need it,
there's so
plunk
many,
in
right?
a new like a new action to kind of bake in a bunch of logic together when we need it. It's that's super handy.
Think
Yeah,
about
Brett
Zapier, for
agrees.
example. Brett, yeah, Brett's a fan. Brett knows what's up.
Yeah.
Coffee and rest things. That's yeah. Um, so, like, what? Imagine in the case, what you could do is you have a Zapier, right? Because that's what salespeople do. Salespeople care about orders by total, and they want to just see like when the whale comes in, right? They want to see when that order lands. Somebody's bought the €60 Ray Bans,
Now I'm
and
just
so
picturing the Hitchhiker's Guide whale just like falling into our laps. But go on, yes.
yeah, exactly. So imagine the use case where you want that, but you maybe Zapier, they might have updated by now, but I don't think Zapier supports GraphQL. And so you've got a tool, you got all kinds of tooling around in the world now that actually is able to go out and fetch this really simple, um, like REST endpoint, get the data and operate on that. Dashboards and being able to create everything else where you would say, okay, we're actually, or this is something that you can really easily protect too, right? Like this isn't exposing all the internals of the GraphQL query. You know, if it's me, like I'm a developer, if I come in here and I see this inside of the inside of my network request, because that's what I do is I poke around and I cause mayhem,
We
and
poke,
I'm
we
like, well,
tinker.
what else is available, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm wanting to start to kind of poke around, and I can just say, no, we've got this very simplistic set of data. It's tuned, it's indexed in my database. This is the performing thing that's going to be hit 1,000 times a day for whatever it is, the employee's little Twitter badge. I mean, there's so many things that might be a use case where a REST endpoint is still a very common paradigm, and you can just be able to surface some of these things. And beyond that, you can also parameterize it, right? So we could also come in here, we could edit this query. We could say that we're going to take not just the orders by total. We're going to give it like an offset here. Not an offset. We'll call it a limit. And this little colon thing here allows us to pass in a special detail here. So we'll go ahead and say, I need to verify that I'm writing that that query correctly. Let me just open this up in another tab. I think it's just as simple as limit, but let me just so we have the order by, and then I'm going to just do a limit 10. And so then what we want to do is we want to parameterize this. So we'll say something like limit is an int. And we'll take that parameterized value. We'll pass this in here. Now we just take this query, run over inside. We can paste this in here. And now we've actually parameterized this. So if we go ahead and say, this is now so we'll leave it as a GET request for now. We'll go ahead and say edit that endpoint. And if we come back over to Hopscotch, we can do, instead of orders by total, we can now do something like orders by total 2. And now we've actually parameterized that REST endpoint to give us sort of custom functionality and behavior that would allow us to modify. You can do query parameters. You can also do mutations this way by passing in like a mutation instead of just queries. So there's a lot of ways where we're able to stick with this paradigm of I have my database, I have this API set on top of it that's basically running all of my code for me. I can do things in the database. I can do things at external locations. I can expose my Stripe API for a very specific use case, expose the Stripe API, a REST API behind my own REST API. There's all kinds of weird use cases we could do here, and be able to find out what makes the most sense for the architecture that makes sense for the application we're building. And that's, I think, the really powerful story here for building and working this way.
Yeah. And of course, as with everything in software development, the final high-level answer to what is the best implementation is it depends.
The
Right?
next one.
It depends. But what I love about this REST thing too, you were saying this is cool for cases where you're trying to talk to a service that doesn't speak GraphQL. And as more and more folks start, implementing GraphQL APIs, I could also see this being a super useful way to kind of bridge that gap, right? So while you're waiting for, I don't know, your favorite API to work on its GraphQL version, like using this as kind of a temporary solution, which then you can, you don't have to write a whole new app. Then when they come out with the GraphQL endpoint, you don't have to like redo everything. You can just kind of hook up a few switches a little different. And
the iterative adoption process is very, very powerful here.
Yeah.
To be able to stick with some of your existing content, because maybe you've got, mobile clients, or you've got integrations with third parties that are very much expecting the shape of this REST endpoint to be. I think we're back now. I had a freeze there. I had a freeze there for 1 minute. They're expecting everything to be the way that that was defined previously. You can just continue to expose those and ship those. Another fun feature, and I actually have to make sure that I'm remembering exactly how it is exposed here, but I want to say that it's at the main endpoint, 8080 slash, oh boy, Swagger. Let's do a Hasura Swagger endpoint. I think I wrote it, so I have to find out.
Yeah, while you're turning that up, yeah. Brett says this feels like a microservice. I totally agree. It's like this is all kind of like, we've talked about microservice architectures a lot in the community, and I feel like we're not on the next. What is below nano services? I don't know, but I like it. Good point, Brett. Yeah. So yeah, and I would also love to know, like, from folks in chat or in the comments on YouTube, if you have used these little one-off REST endpoints for any cool use cases. I would love to hear about it. I think we all would. And again, of course, if there's any questions that crop up, like, by all means, we would love to hear those too. But would definitely be curious to know where folks have found a good fit for this type of little micro mini service with these REST endpoints.
So here you can see we also have the Open Swagger generated from those REST endpoints too. So not Open Swagger, Open API.
Open
spec.
API, yeah.
These are the
cool.
same things, but you can't combine the words. Okay.
Open Swagger is going to be the walk
Open Swagger
down the street after just
handle.
implementing our whole backend in half an hour. Right. Hey.
Open Swagger. Yeah, I like it. So yeah, so this is pretty cool. This is a great way to be able to work with your code. And so yeah. So while we kind of keep poking around here a little bit, Anjana, do you have any questions, or chat? Do you have any questions that we can kind of dive into here? Maybe review a part that was unclear on this process. Otherwise, there's all kinds of things to show off and kick the tires here. But
there are so many things. I think that's usually my kind of main I don't know, snag that I hit, is just being sort of overwhelmed by so many different options for how to go about this. So I guess, I don't know, I'm curious if there's any like, do you have any high level kind of when in doubt, reach for this. If that doesn't work out, then start looking for other options. Takeaways for folks? Just curious. And curious from the crowd as well.
Yeah. And I would love to hear some questions from Chad too. Personally, I run for the actions the most. Because we're going to talk about events, so we didn't even talk about event triggers. But I reach for actions the most because it is something that gives you the most amount of speed of iteration. So writing a database function requires some level of provisioning or modifying your underlying data set. One of Hasura's big benefits is that the majority of API benefits you're getting is not modifying your underlying data set unless you're running a mutation to like insert new items or update items, right? Or delete items. Crud. So that's like one of the big benefits of Hasura. And if you're starting to now implement database functionality like triggers and things of that nature, you are starting to step into a territory where you are doing not point of no return, but like you're making very very specific decisions that you're not going to be able to easily roll back from. And so in this case, I would say if you're wanting to build out functionality and features, doing it through an action is a really great way to iterate, because you can just say, well, that resolver returned garbage, so I'm going to just change it and try again, right? Like that's what I find to be sort of the real power here, is because you can really iterate very, very quickly on how some of these are expected or intended to behave.
Okay, cool. No, that's super
Yeah.
helpful. So then would you recommend like starting out with trying, okay, I'm building a new app. I'm still working out some of the details. I want to be able flexible. So I'm going to start writing with actions. And then once I've got things in a way that they're working and not returning crap, and I'm generally happy with it, then maybe that's the point to think about, okay, is this really going to be as performant as I need? Is this really going to be as like, is this happening in the most logical place for where the data it needs is? And like, you know, could I optimize this by, let's say, now moving the functionality in this action into a function on the database, or now moving it into, you know, some kind of event-based trigger flow. So is that like a good, when I'm kind of starting up on a new idea, start with actions and then move things out to other places as needed once I've got them where I want them?
Yeah, that is exactly it, is knowing where's that line between premature optimization and saying, okay, here's what I can do. So there, and again, there's a lot of cases where you won't be able to do it in the database, or you shouldn't do it in the database, because you can do all kinds of weird stuff with SQL. But like, yeah, there's a lot of cases. Yeah, right. Yeah. So there's a lot of cases where I would say it really makes sense to reach for actions first, because you can just get going. You can build a lot of power. It scales really, really well, right? Because these are events that are happening in a queue that are not going to overflow your system. You can definitely task out your available operating memory for your database if you're not careful. And so, I mean, I just ran 2,000 updates on the database where it was literally querying not just the 2,000, it was querying however many items were also on those carts. So it was like 2,000 times 3 or whatever, you know, for however many. So it's doing all these joints and everything else simultaneously, and it's not necessarily doing that in the most efficient and performant way either, because my SQL is not ninja level. But running these as a queue, that's basically saying, okay, well, my endpoint's handling the first 3, and then the next, and then the next. And so it's able to really work in a very effective way there as well. So I'd say that's probably one very specific tool to look at often. Did we look at events, or did we only look at actions so far?
We talked about events super briefly, but you know, we got a little time left. We got about 10 minutes left. Let's
have a
make this
let's
stream
have a
more
look at events.
eventful.
Nice. So
I'm sorry, everybody. I'll try to have less coffee next time, maybe more coffee. I don't know.
No, don't promise. Don't promise things you have zero intention on delivering.
Like crossover point is.
Yeah. I'll be more rested next time.
Oh.
Yeah. So, anyways, we've got a couple of items here. So let's say we have again this order, and we're wanting to. I'm just trying to see what would be a good use case here to implement a. What we could kind of do here
we're thinking about what would be the right time to
Yeah.
eventify as opposed to actionize.
You're reaching. You're really reaching.
I really am.
So
And it's
let's
only
say,
Tuesday.
let's go to this table we created here, and I'm going to modify this here, this table here. So I'm gonna quickly edit this. I want to change this to one that's going to be thrown away. And so I'm just building out the table here real fast. And what I would do in this case is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add a couple of columns here. I'm going to add a created app. I'm going to add a updated app. Oh, actually, I can't do them both simultaneously. I'm going to do the updated app. I want to do the created app.
Yeah.
I'm going to delete this ID table because it's not letting me have access to what I'm wanting. So I'm going to delete the ID. I'm going to go say ID delete.
It's dealt.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm going to, okay, we got it. Please verify the DAO migration. That's fine, because I'm tracking the migrations on this stuff, so that's fine.
Okay.
It's just a warning. I'm going to go ahead and say, now if I refresh this page, it should give me access to my ID column again. It's not giving me ID, darn it. All right, so I think this is the syntax for it. So ID field, and then the default value is gen random UID. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so we didn't save on that, and then I'm gonna add a field here called like identifier,
Right.
or user identifier, and that's going to be a text field. And then I'm going to create another one that's going to be called order ID, I think, or order total, maybe.
Okay.
So what I'm creating here roughly, I'm going to make this text for now, just for the sake of time. What a use case might be is I want to track some sort of a custom identifier for orders that are maybe not user identifiable information, but I want to somehow identify geo and device type, or I'm wanting to somehow kind of create my own unique fingerprint for a persona shopping inside of my system. And so what I might do is be able to, whenever somebody's created an order, I will have an event automatically occur that will go out. It'll grab things like the IP address of the person visiting. It'll do all kinds of special behavior. And it's just working on getting this analytical information payload of what I'm looking for. And it'll write it back over to analytics when it's ready. But it's not going to be blocking any behavior inside of my order, nor do I really want to expose that to my front end client. This is something that's just kind of plumbing and piping in my back end. So what I can do is I can go to relationships here, to events here, and I'll say that I'm going to create a new trigger that will be, generate or order to analytic. And I'll do this on my default database, and I'll do this on the public schema, and I'll do this on the orders table. And so I'll say whenever there's an insert or an update, actually, I'm just going to only handle insert. Now I'll do update because then I don't have to do as much code to demo it. And then I'll also allow triggering this via console. I'll then call a specific endpoint that will then execute this behavior for me back at Hasura again. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm trying to think through if I'm really getting myself into a world of hurt here, is let me try to see how fast I can scaffold this out. I want to just run this. Actually, maybe I can just do this here inside of our running Next.js application. So if we come into here, we go into the API. We're going to make a new folder here called events.
Okay.
We're going to make a new one called new file. We're going to go ahead and call this insert analytic.ts. I'm going to take this sign up behavior, which is about as close to what I'm looking for in terms of behavior. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the events here. I may really be getting myself over my head here, but that's fine. We're gonna see where this takes us. I'm going to go ahead and run. Is it one level up or is it too? It's too high. Okay, so we go like this. And we just can remove all of that bit for now. Okay, so what we have here is essentially we've got a handler here that is going to be checking for any incoming requests. And what I want to do is I want to just do a console log on the request body. And I want to just comment out this mutation here. I'm going to remove this bit of code there. And I'm going to run a comment out a lot of this here real fast. So we don't need the unique violation. We don't need the check message utility. We don't need this generate JWT. We don't need to worry about that just now. We're not going to worry about handling the error there. And we're going to not even return about, we're just going to return status 200 and we'll do message.
Love it.
Okay. Yeah. Aww. So we got basically some we've got just some basic handlers here. We're going to remove all of that. We'll just console log the error out.
Sure.
And yeah, this should be kind of a really basic thing. What we're going to do is we're just going to see what's coming in, and we're going to console log order updated, and we'll just look at the body coming in here, and we're going to comment out this. So what's going to happen is whenever I call this endpoint, or it makes an update to the event, we're going to just update the behavior here. So we're going to go ahead and say that my endpoint, and let me just go ahead and steal one from my actions here. So I'm going to go to actions. I'm going to go to the sign up endpoint. That URL is this right here. So I'm going to steal that back over there, paste it in API events. And what did I call that thing? It was
insert analytics.
I just copied it because I don't trust my typing. All right, so we have.
Never know when you're.
I think it's events too, right? I think that's what we called it. Events, yeah. In theory, yeah. In theory, we can remove this. Did I call it with 2 S's?
No, I think that was a leftover from the. I think did we get the S on events? Yes. Okay, great.
We did. All right. So in theory, this should now allow us to be able to call this with a post request every time that we update. That's fine. I know that it exists. Create event trigger. So if we create that
format underscore. I love it.
It's just I haven't defined the environment variable in this context, so it's complaining. So we can see some information here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to the data now on this tab, and I'm going to go to the orders, and I'm going to just manually trigger an update now. And you can see this little play button. It's because I said it's available from console, so I can just go ahead and trigger that, and I'm going to invoke the order to analytics. Okay. And we can come over here and see the status of the call here. So we can see invocation logs, and we can see that it got back at 200. If we go to our server logs now, we should see a console log. I'm not tailing my Next.js application, so in that case, this is not going to help me a whole ton.
But that's where we would have put whatever logic we wanted to happen here, right? So
yeah, but we can see that the behavior here sent this invocation of created, and it sent this whole payload. So we can see what the payload actually is here. In this case, it's this whole thing. So where does that get us? Yeah, we could then take that information. And I'm just trying to see if it would make sense to attempt to run the I'm gonna test the fates here. I just want to look up what the name of the
offering to the demo gods real
SDK.
quick.
Yeah, I generate a GQL
Coffee
client
for them.
here. So if we do this, exactly. So if we go ahead and say yarn run, actually it's not what I wanted to do, but okay, we need to remove that. Oh, come on.
And so while we're just up on an hour, I love that we got this event like happening just under the hour mark. But for anybody who is just joining us, reminder that we are going through a series of shows that we have been doing the last few weeks about the magic of actions and events and custom logic in all different configurations that we can work with it in Hasura. So you can check out our other episodes in this series on YouTube. All the recordings are all up there. And please let us know in the comments what you have been using actions or events, in this case, for. Or if you have a use case and you can't really figure out what's the best match for the particular use case you are trying to implement, let us know. We'll be happy to try and help out.
So here we are.
Hey.
So we've got the insert analytics 1, payload, object. We will say that the user identifier 1, 2, 3, and the order total 100, which is a string because it's you can see that the typings are helping me there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of nice about this whole tool. And then now I pass in the return fields.
And this is all this tool that's helping right now.
Exactly.
Is remind me what we're working with here.
GraphQL Zeus.
Zeus, right? GraphQL Zeus.
So if this worked, and then that will be where we end the show. If this worked, what's going to happen is I will trigger this behavior again, and it will insert into the action table.
Can we get a drum roll?
Let's see here. Seemed like it maybe did. Let's have a look at the data table. We'll go to analytics. And we can see that we got that running. So what's really cool, and I just want to run this one more time here just as a demonstration. So if I were to subscribe to the analytics table,
mm-hmm.
I'm looking for the user identifier and the order total.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running a subscription there, and I'm going to go ahead and just run this up parallel. And I go over to my data tab. Well, the UI kind of broke a little bit. We go to my data tab. You can see the payload here for the subscription. If I go to the orders, and I want to go ahead and just run a bunch of updates now, I have to hit the invoke button. You can see those subscriptions happening real time. By the time that it makes the round trip, orders getting updated, it's going to my handler. In this case, I think I broke something. Maybe not. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think it was actually fine. So we're getting real time response, and so my business unit might be watching the updates, right? They might be watching the behavior
mm-hmm.
of these real time analytics, getting a totally neutralized, blind, if you will, analytics table that's totally away from my user table. Like my business unit might have permissions that are only available for analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't see the orders and the users and who making the orders. They can only see this information. I'm able to do this async bridge where the event is doing something and writing back over and updating the content. So
love it.
That's the flow. Thanks for letting me nerd out there for a couple minutes. I'm actually pretty impressed with myself that I only went less than 5 minutes over. So I'm happy with that.
When an engineering project only goes 5 minutes over, I
If
feel
you're as
like
bad
that
of a
is
dev as I
hashtag
am, it's
winning.
nice. It's a good
Oh,
feeling.
come
Yeah.
now. Come now. Don't sell yourself short. We are
Yeah.
all doing our best with these
Yeah. No,
computer
it's good.
things
It's
and
fun stuff.
their persistent way of just not doing what we tell them. Honestly,
Yeah.
where do they get the
No, but
gall?
like I mean, so this is a robust system, right? Like this is
Yeah.
not, I mean, the code that it's executing could have some error handling and things like that. But I didn't write a queue handler. I didn't manage like retry logic. I didn't have to do any of
Mm.
that. And I'm able to implement event driven logic. I mean, it was a joke you made, but like this is event driven logic by just defining where does it happen and what's happening when it arrives. And so this is all
Mhm.
part of like actions are more than just the business logic, more than just the REST connectors, more than even just exposed database functionality. They're also the events that we're able to trigger and call asynchronously. And it's part of how we build and architect with Hasura. So when you think about the tools you have, when you go into that kitchen to go ahead and make your presentation, you're able to say, okay, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? And then you're able to think about which tools are going to help you be able to reach to fastest and be able to get up and going. So,
But this is
yeah.
awesome. It's like a magical Swiss Army knife that just does most of the work for us. I love, yeah, and exactly, it is lol magic indeed. It
Lol
is
magic.
no, it's it is magic. Totally agree,
Yeah.
Brett.
Yeah.
And the options that we have here, hopefully, you know, can accommodate pretty much whatever use case you might have in mind. So again, if you have a use case that you're trying to figure out like how to implement with Hasura, let us know. Comment, ask questions, join our community Discord, and show off what you've
Tell all
made.
your friends.
Bring the whole family down.
Bring the whole family. This is family
Make them
friendly.
watch your slideshow.
That's just a bottle of water on the desk. That's not any adult beverage.
Yeah, no, so please let us know what you're up to, what
Yeah.
questions you might have, what use cases you found for events, for actions, for all this good stuff, the REST endpoints, etc., etc. SQL
And
functions. Yeah.
speaking of bringing the whole family, like what's going down next week?
Next week. What is going down next week? Oh, there's a little event happening, huh? We're going to be at, well, over here in the Bay Area, we're going to be at an event called Reactathon. Is that next week already? Oh my goodness, it's May next week. This is the end of action-packed April.
Well, I was
What's
thinking
going
more
on
about the
with
show,
you?
but Reactathon, yeah. So Reactathon is going to be great. So definitely check that out. There's also some recorded talks that I did in the past. Somebody in this call, not me, is going to be actually hosting Reactathon. So
Gonna be a party. It's me. I'm emceeing. Yeah, and we also have a bunch of other things happening in
but I was going to reference the show for next week. So
in
next week's
the
show,
Dappy
yeah,
show in
is
May.
Yugabyte. We're going to actually have Yugabyte coming on. We're going to be talking about database to database joins, which is going to be a lot of fun. So there's going to be a lot of interesting use cases about how, like, when do you go to Yugabyte? How can you migrate from your existing Postgres database to Yugabyte? That's going to be a lot of fun because when we talked about exposing database functionality, this is like where it really hits the road, right? So if you're able to bring in stuff like specialist DBs that are handling the workloads that you're trying to accomplish, like that's going to be a really fascinating chat. So I'm actually super excited for that one. But
Totally. Yeah. So folks can check out all of the upcoming episodes on the Data and API show page. And you can check out past episodes on YouTube as well. And they're all listed there on that page too. In the playlist of the history of Dappy. So yeah, if you're curious about the rest of the shows in this series where we have gone through all of the ins and outs of working with actions, working with events, working with custom logic for logins, for payments, all of this good stuff that is wrapped up in the Super App demo app for an e-commerce site. You can read all about the app. You can check out the past episodes that we've done the last few weeks. and you can learn all about it, like I have been doing from Jesse. Thank you so much for explaining all of these things to us.
Thanks for
Jesse.
joining. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to be a wrap for this week's show. We appreciate y'all being here, and we will see you all next week, same time, 10 a.m. Tuesday. Bye.